Berlin, we were joined by Alexander Young, CEO and co-founder of SoundCloud. Today, we're joined by his counterpart, Eric Wahlforss, who is the CTO and co-founder. So please welcome him to the stage, and our moderator, Josh Constein.
Thanks for coming out, Eric.
Thank you.
So you're not just a SoundCloud user, you're actually a DJ as well, right?
I wouldn't say DJ, I would say more producer.
You're a producer, okay.
Music, yeah.
So I mean, there's been a lot of cool people that have come on stage this week, but honestly, I've heard that you can actually get people into Berghain, which is the coolest club in Europe. That pretty much marks you as cooler than most of the celebrities or any of the rich people we've had up here.
Yeah, but you know what's even cooler is that the reason I can get people in there is because I actually performed at Berghain. So
that's pretty legit. Okay, so you're starting from a pretty legit point in my book, but the problem is that SoundCloud is in a really interesting space in its lifespan. You know, it's been raising money. It's got over $123 million in funding at this point, but it's still losing money pretty quickly. It had $29 million in losses on, I think, $13 million in revenue in 2013. So I want to ask, first off, who are you trying to be as SoundCloud? Are you guys the successor to MySpace Music?
I think, you know, when we started to go back, like when we started the company, right, like we felt that the web was kind of broken in multiple ways. And like one of the things was like I was on MySpace, I was trying to use it, and I was using like Send It to send files and stuff. And so we built the product for us and for, you know, me, my co-founder, he was also working, you know, with music and audio. And we kind of solved that thing of like sharing a piece of music or audio with the world. And then I think it just sort of took off. And then there were, you know, now we're kind of, you know, we went through, you know, the first sort of couple of years working with creators, trying to build sort of the best product for them, right? And then we went into, like, we realized that what the creators wanted was scale and audience. So we started looking more at the listener experience, and we really built up like this sort of tremendous scale, right? So now we have like 175 million unique listeners on the network in any month. And now we're kind of like onto the third stage, which is about the revenue piece, right? So like as you have a lot of scale as an artist, you want to earn a revenue on the platform. So you want to try and make a living with what you do, right? And so that's kind of like the third stage of the company, and we just sort of recently went into it. So that's kind of like, you know, what we're trying to be and where we're going.
So I know the way that I got into SoundCloud was because one of my good friends is a DJ, and he posts his mix sets there, you know, hour-long mixtapes of his DJ performances. And it's really not the music on the radio that draws me to SoundCloud. It's things like these DJ sets and remixes. You know, why has that scene chosen SoundCloud as its home?
You know, I think like, you know, so we have over like, you know, in the last 12 months or so, more than 10 million creators were heard on SoundCloud, so more than 10 million, and that's a very large number. They post like 12 hours of content every single like minute on the site. So there's a lot of kind of content, there's a lot of breadth and a lot of depth. And I think, you know, like that's ultimately our unique positioning in the world, is kind of like a lot of breadth and depth in content. And a connection to the artist, right? You know, you mentioned you know the person who's posting stuff, and I think like that's increasingly common, and we're trying to be, you know, more social and try to, you know, connect artists with their listeners and their fans.
So I love the remix culture personally. I think across the web, the democratization of creation platforms and tools has made it so people can take somebody else's art and give it a new spin, make it into something really special and new. But that can be a double-edged sword, because sometimes those remixes are unlicensed. They include samples that haven't been approved for use, or they're these big mixtapes, and maybe a few of the songs that a DJ played, they weren't licensed. They're not allowed to use those songs, and so when they post those mixes on SoundCloud, they're technically illegal. Now, I know that you guys are signing deals with labels to make more of the music on SoundCloud copyright friendly, and you've got a tool that helps find the stuff that's illegal, but what are you doing to be able to legally host and monetize that kind of, those remixes and those mixtapes?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, right, we just recently, like in August, mid-August, we rolled out what we call Own SoundCloud. And on SoundCloud is essentially our kind of creator program where if you sign up with that program, and for now it's invite only, you have the opportunity to earn a revenue on SoundCloud, right? And how we do that at the moment with the kind of scale that we have is through advertising, right? So we actually work with a number of big brands, and by doing that, we're essentially enabling revenue. We only work with a small number of partners at the moment, but we're sort of like increasing that bucket by the day, and it's super exciting times. I mean, it's very early days, right? But we're trying to start solving those sort of issues through this new program called on SoundCloud.
I heard you guys are using sort of a similar model to YouTube, where there's sort of networks that are turning up and they're aggregating different artists onto their network, and then they sell ads across them in a combined method. Is that sort of the approach that you guys are taking?
Yeah.
I've heard it's like you need to have around 100,000 plays a month or something to be something that the networks are interested in or that the advertisers are interested in.
Right. So I think like we launched with the broad category of rights holders and creators, right? So we really have the whole spectrum. It's from like very large labels to like indie aggregators to like non-music partners, basically audio partners, podcasters, and so on, right? We also signed with a number of like individual artists as well. So we try to create a program that can basically work for all kinds of different creators. Yeah.
So what are you guys going to do about the music that's not licensed and you don't get copyright approval by signing a deal with the label? Like, are you guys going to take that music down?
Yeah. So I mean, I can't sort of comment on the specific categories of content in this case. What I will say is like, and this is of course this is a tricky issue. This is at the core of what we do and so on. We take it very seriously, and like like as an artist, yes, it's probably, in some cases, it's a tricky user experience. If you upload something, you didn't actually have the right to it, and the copyright owner comes back and, takes it down and so on. However, I think, in the long run, creators, artists, rights holders, they really appreciate that we care deeply about these things and that we actually protect their copyright. So I think, like that's the balance we have to try and work with, right? And in the long run, I think we want to work it out in a way that works for everyone.
Sure. I mean, I know artists want to make sure that they get paid. They don't want somebody else to upload their full song and get plays on it and them not get their royalties for it. But I think a lot of other artists would say that, oh, if I make a remix of someone or I include someone else's song in my mixtape, I'm promoting them. I'm trying to help them. Why should I get my music taken down? And I think a lot of the reason a lot of these people came to SoundCloud was because they thought of it as a haven where that kind of remix culture was accepted. But now it seems like you guys are changing your ways on it.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with much of that, right? And I think, we operate under the principle that you really have to have the rights to be able to do this stuff. And so if the rights are there, like then the use is perfectly fine. So there's a lot of promotional use on the platform, right? And that's, we welcome that, right?
So should DJs expect their stuff to get taken down if it has unlicensed samples?
Again, like I can't comment on like sort of specific content buckets or specific
Why not?
Content. It's just it's just very complicated, right? So.
I don't know. It doesn't sound all that complicated to me. It's like if something is if an hour-long mixtape includes a 2-minute sample that's not licensed, should it be taken down?
Well, I mean, I guess the short answer to that is like, if you have the rights to put it out there, then it will be fine, right? And
if you don't have the rights to put it out there, it's not okay and it'll get taken down?
Well, yeah, again, like I can't comment sort of like on the specific circumstance.
All right. Yeah. So there's more traditional music formats like albums. They work really well with audio ads. People play them all the way through, and so it makes sense if like 3 songs in, you play an audio ad in the middle. But with the music that I found on SoundCloud, it's more like individual songs or these really long mixtapes, and neither of them really feel like the right place for those kind of audio ads. You're either playing like a pre-roll to a song, which just feels like a terrible user experience, or you have to wait until after the giant mixtape is done, and then people are just going to bounce before they listen to the ad, or you have to inject it into the middle of the mixtape, and that's an even worse experience. So how do you guys monetize those kind of one-off tracks or those big mixtapes?
Yeah, so I mean, we've thought long and hard about this, obviously, and to kind of monetize at that sort of scale and going, towards basically 1 billion users, to make something that's kind of that open and works for everyone is tricky, right? And we're kind of, we're literally just getting started with it. But the thing is, I think, like personally, I get excited about native forms of advertising, right, where it sort of really makes sense. And just to give one example, right? So we just recently had Jaguar sponsor a emerging artist called Sizzlebird with his track Leaves, and basically they essentially bought promotional plays and they get placement within that context, right? And so in the stream, if you browse SoundCloud, all of a sudden you see Sizzlebird's new track and it's promoted by Jaguar. And those kinds of partnerships, essentially pairing brands and bands, like that's the kind of stuff that we feel we can do and we're uniquely positioned to do. And so we're looking to offer a variety of different advertising products, but that's kind of how we like to think about it. I mean, again, also like it's super early days, right? And we already talked about the fact that we're actually going to roll out a subscription component as well. So we feel like, if you have that kind of large scale, there's no way that you can sort of solve that by just having a subscription or something like that. We need to have something that works, that's kind of open as well, right? So we need both ingredients in there.
So your monetization, those native ads, that sounds more like sort of how Facebook injects ads into the news feed than the way that Spotify plays ads in between songs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I mean that's really kind of like the model we want to work towards if we can. Yeah.
So that really depends on people browsing SoundCloud as a discovery experience, not just like going in to play one-off tracks or artists that they already know, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like audio is native to SoundCloud, right? So like there could be an audio component of an ad, and it could work really nicely in a listening experience, right? We just have to work through that and work with brands that we feel are well aligned with the brand.
So it sounds like there's still a lot of stuff that's up in the air. It's at this big critical period, but across the music industry, beyond a few big exits, it's been kind of tough times. Spotify has only just started to break even in some markets, and overall it's still burning a lot of money. And a lot of other services, like RDO, and people have raised a lot of money and really haven't seen much return at all. And in some ways your content seems even tougher to monetize. How optimistic are you about becoming a big money-making business?
I mean, I'm obviously biased, right? So like I'm super optimistic. Right now, I feel like the thing we're really focused on doing is building a sustainable model at scale, right? That really works at scale. So like, as we're going towards literally 1 billion users, we just need to figure out like what all the components in that mix need to be able to monetize that effectively and share back a lot of revenue towards creators. And that's like ultimately the thing. If we can make it sustainable for creators, for us, and for listeners, like then we've won. That's our game. That's what we want to do.
So when people say sustainable, what they really often mean is slow. Like it takes time to get somewhere in a sustainable way without burning your users. If you cram too many ads in too quickly, you shock people, they hate it, and they leave. Does that mean that you're going to have to end up raising more money?
I mean, I would be the first to admit that it takes time, right? So like we've been at this now for 7 years, right? And we just recently rolled out kind of our really scalable monetization layer. And so it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this for literally 4 years. And we're, it's going to be multiple years until we can really sort of prove this thing at scale, right? But we feel super positive about it.
So if you're not really making enough money to prove out to Wall Street or to a public market that you can IPO, it sounds like you will end up needing to take more money, unless of course you get acquired. Is that something like? Do you think that Spotify, or that if Spotify has been able to do it independently, can you guys do it independently, or can SoundCloud succeed independently, or does it really need to be acquired to best achieve its mission?
I think like on the point of IPO, it's like that's just like a milestone on the way in the history of a company, right? So like that's one path you can take. And I think like at the end of the day, we're trying to build a sustainable, scalable business. We have a ton of growth, right? And so we're just sort of fueling that growth and trying to make it work and make it sustainable in and of itself. And I mean, yeah, there are multiple paths you can take, right? But like that's our focus.
Well, in terms of those different paths, there's a few different ones. You know, there's teaming up with Spotify somehow and trying to unify that very independent music sphere with the major label music sphere, or teaming up with Twitter, as you were rumored to be in talks with, which would be sort of owning that musician to fan connection, or teaming up with Google, who obviously helped YouTube with this, and becoming a true open platform for audio. Which of those is most aligned with SoundCloud's long-term mission?
I think, like in general, music is like super engaging, and music is something that basically everyone is sort of interested in. We probably have well over 1 billion people listening to music on the web already today in different shapes and forms, right? So that's why it's interesting, and I think, I can't sort of go into the specifics of like who we would, who potentially we would work with, right? But like, yeah, I think that's why, there's also inbound interest, like there's, yeah, that's just, that's just the reality of being in the position we are in. Yeah.
In the long term, what are you guys trying to do with your product to make it a better fit for either monetization or really growing your user base to a larger extent? Because I feel like right now it's kind of a messy experience picking and choosing through the different artists. It doesn't feel like the kind of unified search experience you get in some music apps.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. Like, I really kind of obsess about that part of what we do, right? And I think, like, over the last couple of years, we've gone through like an evolution which actually has made the product sort of like simpler and simpler and simpler. It started super simple. At some point, it was really complicated. Now it's kind of becoming simple again, right? So like we launched an iOS app in June, late June, and that's kind of reducing SoundCloud down to like a few kind of core experiences. And I think, we're looking to build on that. We're looking to see, can we simplify further? Can we like actually take out one more thing and see if we can make it work with that kind of simplicity? I think, a more lean back experience, a way to kind of experience new stuff without having necessarily to fiddle with it and like lean forward. I think that's something we're super interested in. We just recently, like last week, we launched with Twitter, right? So like, I think that's, we do that in service of creators, right? Like, we want to integrate into the places where it makes sense, right? So like, if I'm a creator and I want to get my stuff out, I post something on SoundCloud and I can now share it on Twitter, and you can play like inline on Twitter. You can keep browsing Twitter while you listen to SoundCloud stuff, and then you can kind of like go back into our app and discover more. So like, those kinds of integrations, especially on mobile, those are the kinds of things we want to do, like for creators and actually for listeners as well at the end of the day.
So the music space has really exploded over the last year, and there's all these new people moving in. Amazon just launched a streaming service that's part of Amazon Prime, and now YouTube is said to be launching a service. I've heard that it may actually launch at CMJ in the next few weeks. But do you think that there needs to be more streaming music services, or does there need to be some kind of consolidation so that there's a few players really with the resources to do it right?
Well, I mean, again, like without commenting too much on like other players out there, right? Like, I feel like what we do, I'm still very excited about. Like drawing on the power of the web, like the read-write aspects of the web, the fact that it's an open, there's an open web. It's open. Anyone can come in, and things can go viral and go crazy. Like, those kinds of platforms, I think I get very excited about, and I think like there's potentially more room for that, just generally with the internet as a technology enabler, and I feel like that's still the things that sort of like those are the things that get me super excited about working in music, today, right?
Sometimes in technology, it feels like there's this curve where startups begin and they're venture backed, so they don't need to make money at first, and they grow and they sort of get this feeling of cool. I imagine how Snapchat sort of felt a year ago or so, and really how SoundCloud felt a year ago when I did my interview with your CEO, Alex. You guys really felt like, wow, it's like, this is just out there to try to make people happy, but then eventually you have to own up to the money that you've taken and you have to monetize. Is there a disconnect, or is there a way to make money while still being cool, or are those fundamentally at odds?
The thing is, like, I'm like super excited about that, right? Because like we only talked about it publicly, you know, like two months ago about basically the On SoundCloud program and the fact that we're now, you know, actually helping artists to earn a living and earn a revenue. But like those plans have been in the work, you know, for like multiple years, and we've been talking about these topics for like so long, even since the early days of the company, right? So like, I'm super excited about that stage, and like, yeah, it's super challenging. I mean, I would immediately, you know, admit that it's the kinds of negotiations and the kinds of conversations we're going through. I mean, yes, it's very complicated stuff. It's tricky stuff, and we're kind of breaking new ground. You know, like we're trying something that hasn't really been tried at this sort of scale yet, and we're doing something that's actually different, you know, compared to a lot of our companies. So it's challenging, but like it's super exciting, and I think it's pretty cool. But like, you know, that's me.
Yeah, it seems like it's a very complicated time. Hopefully in 6 months or a year we can talk again and you'll have more answers. You really didn't answer very many of my questions today, but you have great hair, so I'm going to let it slide. It was fun talking with you, Eric.
You too,
Cheers.
by the way.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks.